Now let's move over to kind of the opposite side of things. Those teams are all in pretty good positions to have a good offseason. What
Hmm.
about the teams that just need to prove something, right? There's a couple teams that had a down year last year. You're looking to bounce back, right? And if you don't bounce back, that's when conversations are going to start up. Just a few teams that you want to list right here. Who do you want to get us started with? Three teams with the most pressure.
You know, maybe I'm being too harsh, and maybe I'm, just a homer, but I think there's a lot of pressure on the San Francisco 49ers this offseason. I think you look at the 49ers and you compare them directly to their two divisional opponents, the Rams and the Seahawks. The Niners, I understand were hurt this year. I understand they had injuries. But if you're being honest, if you're a Niners fan, if you're a part of the Niners front office, the Seahawks and the Rams right now are lapping you. And John Lynch for the 49ers has had multiple drafts in a row without a lot of high impact starters. I mean, really, like, look at the Niners draft history over the last few years. They're still kind of coasting on that, late 2010s, early 2020s kind of gold rush that they were on, pun intended, by the way. This is a team that really doesn't have a great young core, right? Their core currently consists of an old offensive tackle, a running back about to be on the wrong side of 30, Brock Purdy, a tight end on the wrong side of 30 who's just dealing with a season ending injury, a defensive end who's dealing with multiple season ending injuries, multiple ACL tears, and a linebacker who also was out for the entire year with an ankle injury. I'm not saying that this 49ers team is going to go like 4 and 13. I'm not predicting like the sky is going to fall, but I think this is a 49ers team that is in desperate need of a really good offseason. Again, they saw their divisional opponent, Seattle Seahawks, win the Super Bowl on their turf. If it wasn't going to be them, it would have been the Rams, right? So just on that point alone, you're behind. And again, you see these teams around the league who have stocked themselves fresh with so much young talent. So many high impact young players on their rookie deals. Some of those guys are about to get paid, like Puka and JSN, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a 49ers team, I think, that has lost that front office magic that they had years ago. And they are in a position where their former or their current core is starting to age and get injured. This is, to me, is a team under a lot of pressure in this offseason. You do not want to be the third best team in this division. Like, it is very, very difficult. So I think, again, obviously they had a good year, and you could definitely, tip your cap at the job that Kyle Shanahan did last year. He did a phenomenal job given all the injuries. But I'm looking at the 49ers front office and I'm saying I need some wins here. I need some really good high impact young players because right now, like, who do you love on the 49ers on their rookie deal? Right? I don't think that you love anybody. You might like Ricky Pearsall, you might like a couple of these other guys, but this to me is a 49ers front office that it has a lot of pressure on it right now.
I'm with you. I think if you want to extend that window, you gotta start hitting on these guys that could propel you to that level. Because you're spot on. Upton Stout was a good rookie, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't standout.
No.
Mikal Williams, we saw some stuff and then he got hurt.
Yep.
But again, he's coming off an injury. Ricky Pearsall, we've seen things, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So yeah, I mean, who on the rookie deal has really been an outstanding player?
Yeah.
Mustafa, maybe.
No, he's okay.
Well,
I
there
mean,
you go. So there's really no one here that stands out except Dominic Puny, possibly. I'll maybe give him that nod, but even that's being generous, right?
yeah.
There's no George Kittle. There is no one like that. And they're not a team that has really been excellent in free agency either. They're not a team that really has that outstanding amount of cap space where you can bring in a big name free agent. It's going to be the Purdy show. And Purdy has been good, but how good will he be when he has to have an entire season? No Christian McCaffrey. All these guys are starting to decline. That becomes the story. And you want to avoid that as long as you can. I'm with you. There's a
And
lot
now
of
no
pressure on
Robert
this team.
Saleh either. He left for Tennessee. I totally
Yeah,
forgot to mention that.
but it is really nice. They were able to get Raheem Morris. That it was a really nice
True.
defensive coordinator hiring. I'm with you in that sense, though. 49ers need to find a way to keep their window open. Now, speaking of keeping their windows open, Philly. I think this is far and away the number one. Far and away the number one. They, I mean, look at the conversations around this team. Look at the conversations around this team. You have multiple offensive coordinators opting out of a job working with this offense that I still remember just a year ago was touted as maybe the most talented offensive unit we ever seen assembled. And no one wants to be there. People are opting out of the opportunity to be there. We see a guy like Brian Dable actively choosing a job with Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans, over the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe you blame Nick Sirianni. You could blame a bunch of different people. But the reality is this culture is in the worst spot possible, right? You have an offensive line coach in Jeff Statland that has been a core piece of your franchise who just said, like, I want out of Philly. A coach, a position coach. This is red flags all over the place, and you have to recover. You have to recover by not just making it to the playoffs. You need to look good for an entire season. I don't really like the Mannion hiring. I don't. I think it's a terrible fit with Jalen Hurts. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but they need to find a way to go back to being the team they were, because if not, this bad culture and all these red flags become more than just red flags. They become the reality. They become the truth about this team. Everything that people are saying, everything AJ Brown saying about wanting out, it makes sense why you would want out if you continue to underperform to this extent. You need to make these conversations about a bad culture in Philly just a conversation. Have it end there. Don't let it translate to the field. It looked like it translated to the field a lot last year. Kevin Patullo did a terrible job. You need to bounce back as a franchise. Anything below the NFC Championship would be a disappointing season for the Philadelphia Eagles this upcoming year. That's a high standard, but you look at this roster, I think it is very valid to have this standard. You look at the free agents. Dallas Goedert, Reed Blankenship, Jalen Phillips, he was really good last year. N'Kobe Dean, Adoree Jackson, all those guys, contributors. How are you going to pay all of them? You probably aren't. Do they have guys on the bench that could step up? That's going to be the storyline for this team. They have to not just make those decisions, but those decisions have to work because, again, there is so much on the line for the Philadelphia Eagles this upcoming season.
Yeah, it's so funny to me. I mean, I know we've talked about this, but when have you ever seen a Super Bowl champion as of 380 days ago being talked about the way we're talking about this Philadelphia Eagles team? I mean, you go in the streets of Philadelphia, it's like the sky's falling and like, the rapture's going on. It's like, dude, you guys just won the Super Bowl, okay? Literally like 380 days ago. And all year, it was kind of this recurring storyline of the Eagles are disappointing, the Eagles are disappointing, the Eagles are disappointing. And when you look at it from the surface, it's like, well, they were the number 3 seed and they lost a close game in the wild card, whatever. But this team all year was very much below expectations. They were a shell of themselves, what they were in 2024. So I agree with you. I think the Eagles are under an immense amount of pressure. Another team that I think is under an immense amount of pressure is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are under a lot of pressure this offseason. I'll tell you why. Number one, whenever you let go of a dependable, floor raising coach, is what I would call Sean McDermott, the expectation is that, all right, if you're swinging for the fences, you better hit a home run. So the expectation for the Buffalo Bills is, I would argue, not to go to the playoffs, not to win a playoff game, not to even make it to the AFC Championship game. This is a team that has to be playing in February, or else there are going to be some real questions. Now, the reason there's so much pressure for this team is, number one, rookie head coach and Joe Brady. Very few rookie head coaches in NFL history have ever gone to the Super Bowl in their first season or two. A lot of those have been coaches such as George Seifert, who kind of inherited the team from Bill Walsh or whoever, like Barry Switzer in the '90s with the Cowboys after the falling off with Jimmy Johnson. This is a team that is expected to go to the Super Bowl. They have not been. They are expected to go to the Super Bowl. Another thing is, this defense is in a really bad spot, in my opinion, because they have like no money. They are in a bad cap situation. So not only do you have pressure because you have an MVP caliber quarterback, you have a first year head coach, you have a defense that is, I think, going to be depleted, but you also don't have the financials to patch a lot of the areas on the roster that you need. So this is on Billy Bean to hit home run after home run after home run in the draft. And when you look at his draft history, there really haven't been a lot of hits. We lamented this fact when we were talking about the Sean McDermott firing, about how Billy Bean not only got a brand, I keep saying Billy Bean, Brandon Bean. Can you guys tell it's almost baseball season? I'm talking about the Moneyball guy. Brandon Bean, we lamented the fact that, hey, with Sean McDermott gone, he was kind of elevated. He's like, all right, you're promoted. You're the guy. and he hasn't really had a whole lot to show for these last few years. So for him to be now, the number one, the winner of the power struggle is what I'll say in Buffalo. He is now under a lot of pressure to get this draft right because they do not have the financials to fix this roster really in free agency. They're gonna have to do this through the draft. They're gonna have to fix this defense. And again, the pressure's also on Joe Brady to be a guy that gets them to the Super Bowl sooner rather than later. Because you're not firing Sean McVay to losing the AFC Championship to Mahomes again. I'm sorry, like that's a net negative if that's the outcome, right? You got to go to the Super Bowl, and Brandon Beat has to fix this roster.
No McDermott means the defense just has to
Hmm.
step up in terms of the individuals because I think people kind of undersell how much McDermott has done with that defensive unit, how much better they played than they should have for years. Now you have an offensive minded head coach. I'll be honest, there's not a single team that I hate their offseason so far more than Buffalo.
Yep.
There really isn't. It's early, but my lord,
Why
it is.
you didn't like the owner calling out the former first round receiver? You didn't like that or no?
I genuinely forgot how dysfunctional Buffalo was as a
Yeah.
franchise
Yep.
because of how good they've been
Because
with
of Josh
McDermott.
Allen. Josh
Yeah,
Allen made
because
himself
of
forget
Josh
too.
Allen and
Yep.
McDermott.
Yep.
Now they do this, and I'm reminded, oh, this was why this team has been irrelevant my entire life before number 17 came
Yep.
around. This was why. They're a terrible organization. And yeah, I mean, prove me wrong, right? Because
Yeah.
right now the standard has been set. You guys are terrible.
And I know we talked about it, like, and maybe it's an unfair talking point, but like this was the year without Mahomes and without Lamar. You couldn't get through Bo Nix. Next year I would bet a lot of money that Mahomes and Lamar are going to be in the playoffs next year, and probably
Very
Joe
likely.
Burrow as well. Well, I don't know. The Bengals are pretty bad, but
Very
maybe
likely.
Joe Burrow, right?
Well, you
So
mentioned Lamar, right? So let's go over my next team because I
yeah,
think
let's
it
do
is
that.
very
Let's do that.
important to say there is so much on the line for Baltimore, right? You move on from another head coach here, John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has been a solid head coach for a very long time, very nice culture guy. And you pretty much say he ran his course. And I'm not saying that was a bad call, but I'm saying now the standard is, it's high. You have to outperform what Harbaugh's been doing. I do trust Minter to do that, but that's besides the point. There's a lot of pressure here. Minter has to perform. Lamar has to perform. Fans are expecting at least a playoff win, and not just some playoff win against Pittsburgh, right? They want a legitimate playoff win against another playoff caliber team. Derrick Henry is only going to be getting older. There's a lot of guys on this team that are only going to be getting older. You have to capitalize. You have to capitalize. Lamar is only going to be this young for so long. Eventually, he's going to start to age up. We already see him starting to get banged up. You have to take advantage when you have an unreal talent like that. You have a first year head coach, but that's not the standard people are holding him to. They're holding him to be better than John Harbaugh. He has to prove that. They don't have too much money to play around with. I mean, when you're a very good team paying a quarterback, you're not going to have too much, but they are on the younger side, average age 26, $22 million in cap space. They could do something with that, but whatever move they make, it has to move the needle. It has to move the needle.
Well, and they're gonna have to give Lamar a new contract. I feel like people are forgetting about that. Like Steve Bouchard said at his presser that hey, there's gonna be some negotiation there. So whatever Lamar's getting now, I'm sure he's gonna get a pay increase, right? He's not gonna negotiate for less money, right? We don't think. But no, I'm with you. I think Baltimore. There's a lot of pressure on Baltimore, and very similarly to Buffalo, where it's like MVP quarterback, first year head coach, on a team that has not been able to get over the hump. And I don't want to kind of regurgitate, kind of those storylines you're going to see on ESPN, but like it is telling that like Sam Darnold got a ring. You know what I mean? Sam Darnold has a ring. Lamar, Josh Allen do not. This has been Mahomes' AFC for years now. Which team is going to get over the hump? Because the Chiefs, even if Mahomes is back, in the first quarter of the season and he's back to being Mahomes, this is not a great roster. Like we've talked about this Chiefs team about being, depleted from what they have been in years past. Like this is not a team that I think is really just some juggernaut. So can they get past the Chiefs? Can they make it to the AFC Championship game? Can they win in the AFC Championship game? I think Buffalo and the Baltimore. I was tongue twister there. Baltimore and Buffalo are two kind of very similar teams in that regard. I'll give one more team, and this is a team that I'm gonna need you guys to hear me out on a little bit. Okay, a team under a lot of pressure that I think with one bad offseason, one offseason could really change the way that we think about this team, kind of one way or the other, right? And that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, listen. Everybody's gonna look at me like, "What are you talking about? The Steelers suck." Yada yada yada. And I get that, and I'm genuinely more pessimistic about Pittsburgh than most people. But when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, this has been a team that has continued their winning ways for decades. Like there is a Pittsburgh way, there is a Pittsburgh standard. This is a team now that has a lot of questions at quarterback, which we'll talk about later today. Trust me, a lot of questions at quarterback. Now, front office you don't particularly trust or believe in, right? This is not a team that is super young. They are the highest paid defense in the NFL. They're also they're also the oldest defense in the NFL. This is an offseason, I think, that will shape the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise goes the next 3 years. Because I do not want the I'm very interested to see if the Steelers stick to their ways and say, listen, we're gonna play for 9 wins. We're gonna sign some vets on defense that don't get anybody excited, but they were part of the 2017 All Pro Bowl team or whatever. Like this is not a philosophy that has been successful for them, right? Signing aging veterans, making non aggressive trades, going out and really not hitting on a lot of good young players from the draft. This is an offseason that's going to tell me all I need to know about the Steelers going forward the next 3 years. Again, I like you guys, I am not looking at the 2026 Steelers as a boomer bust Super Bowl caliber team. That's not what I'm doing. What I am doing though is I'm seeing if this point in their trajectory, they're at kind of this like infraction point, right? Are they going to continue on their old ways and continue and act like nothing ever happened and try to repeat the Tomlin magic with Mike McCarthy? Or are they as an organization going to say, listen, we've been stuck in the mud for like 15 years. We are going to completely 180. We're going to try something new. We're going to do something new. We're going to try to get a young quarterback, even if it's not the most successful in year one. What are we going to do differently than what we have been doing in years past? So to me, the Steelers and their front office are under a lot of pressure because Steelers fans are not stupid, right? They realize that the cycle they've been in of mediocrity these last, again, 10 years is not helping. So to me, they're under the most pressure, but it's a different kind of pressure than what we were just talking about, like with the Ravens and with the Bills, where there's immediate pressure to succeed. This to me is, where is the franchise going? And as a Steelers fan, can I have faith going forward?
I disagree just because I think they already answered that question. I do.
With
By
the coach,
hiring
I agree. I
Hiring
agree.
McCarthy answered that question. And they chose the bad answer.
Yeah, I
They
agree. I'll give them the
I
benefit to
think they
see
already did
what
it.
they do in free agency in the draft, though.
Mhm.
I'll give
Well,
them the benefit.
we're gonna talk more about Pittsburgh
Yes.
really soon, but before we get to the continued conversation about Pittsburgh and the most important position on the field that they're not treating with the importance that it deserves, the New York Giants are the team I want to mention. Similarly to the Steelers, in the sense of we're not talking about them make it to the Super Bowl. They just want to give fans optimism. The fans have been really upset for a very long time. And then they hired John Harbaugh. And all of a sudden, as someone that goes to college here at Marist in New York, right? As someone that was raised in New York, as someone who has a Giants fan family, I know how people felt about Harbaugh being hired. When I'm telling you, people on my street were literally lighting fireworks for John Harbaugh being hired. That is no exaggeration. I can't even imagine what happened in the city, right? I live in suburban New York, yet I still saw people lighting fireworks for John Harbaugh. They decided to bring him in, and that caused so much optimism for Giants fans. But then what happened just a few weeks later? We're now talking about them building maybe the worst offensive coaching staff ever assembled, right? Is that exaggeration? Probably. But there's a lot of ugly names on that list. A lot of ugly names on that list. And all of a sudden, the optimism that we had from John Harbaugh being hired seems to be evaporating a lot. And that's valid. Can they recover it though? They have some money to play around with. They definitely do, right? I want to see how they work with it. They have to find a way to keep Jermaine Illuminor around. I think he is one of the more underrated players in the entire sport at the moment. You have a young Jackson Dart. You have a young Cam Scatterbo. You have Malik Neighbors coming back. There are pieces already here. There definitely are. It's just, again, a question of how do they optimize it, right? They have to put a good draft together to clean up the little areas where they are weak. And then you have a very real roster here. They need to kind of disprove all this stuff about the offensive staff looking as bad as it does and kind of give fans a distraction from the fact Matt Nagy is their offensive coordinator.
So I know I didn't just hear you disrespect 2018 Coach of the Year Matt Nagy. I know those words did not come out. No, I'm clearly joking. I think you're absolutely correct, and I don't need to tell you you're correct. 'Cause I don't live in New York, and you do, so you have more of a firsthand indication of this. But the optimism from John Harbaugh getting signed to Matt Nagy being announced as the offensive coordinator, it cratered pretty fast. Um, I agree with you that I think John Harbaugh obviously is not a X's and O's schematic coach like a Mike McDonald or a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan or like a Jesse Minter, who is now his successor in Baltimore. So for him, the key is going to be to assemble as good of a staff as possible. And Matt Nagy being the offensive coordinator selection, God help us all. I think that Matt Nagy was a guy, obviously, he was in Kansas City for the least successful Patrick Mahomes years. And, this offseason, it was kind of telling to me because he was their offensive coordinator and could have come back. And they're like, no, we'll take Eric Bieniemy. We want Eric Bieniemy back. We're not going to have Matt Nagy coming and replicating that. And then, obviously, Andy Reid was like, yeah, hire him. And he told John Harbaugh to give Matt Nagy a shot. I also saw, I don't know if you heard this, John Harbaugh reportedly had extensive conversations with Rex Ryan about being defensive coordinator. That is kind of the most John Harbaugh thing I've ever heard in my life. And I actually don't doubt that one bit. Like I don't think I think if it was John Harbaugh's way, Rex Ryan would be the defense coordinator right now. So I agree with you. Like the Giants are under a lot of pressure. They are a team that is seen as a lot of people's trendy pick to like kind of go from zero to hero, right? And probably were my pick as well up until I saw Matt Nagy. That kind of scared me a little bit. But there's a lot of talent on this team, obviously. But we see it all the time. You can have as much talent as you want. We just talked about the Eagles, right? You can have as much talent as you want. If you have poor coordinators, it kind of all goes out the window. So safe to say, like you said, the Giants, clock's ticking a little bit with them, and Matt Nagy wasn't exactly the most inspired hire in the entire world. I'm really surprised that wasn't a more desirable coordinator job
Right?
than some of these other places. Like I preferred New York. I mean, unless people around the league really don't like Jackson Dart, which I know you were Jackson Dart's biggest op for a while, so maybe you could see eye to eye at that. But I personally, I thought that was one of the more attractive offensive coordinator spots. But it ended up kind of just being like, well, guess we'll get Matt Nagy. Like there wasn't really a huge rush to go to New York.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know why. I mean, we know they wanted Munkin, and then Munkin got hired by Cleveland. They had
Yeah,
no backup plan. They had
yeah,
no backup plan whatsoever. I don't think it's really as many people declined the job as much as it was Harbaugh wanted a veteran, right? He didn't want to go with an unknown. He wanted to bring in a guy that he knows can do the job.
yeah,
And Nagy can do the job of an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
yeah.
So could Kevin Petullo. Like he can't do it well, but he has done it in
Yes,
theory.
yes. He
So
has been employed as an offensive coordinator before. That is
yes,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
He hasn't called plays though since Chicago. Am I right?
yeah, I mean,
Because Andy Reid's been calling the plays, so he hasn't called plays since like 2020,
but
2021.
again, like, don't dis. Let's be honest though. Okay, the Chiefs in 2022 led the league in points scored. This was still the year after they got rid of Tyreek Hill. So don't give me the it's Tyreek Hill. Don't give me the supporting cast got worse. The year after they got rid of Tyreek Hill, they led the league in points for. Led the league in points scored. The next year, Eric Bieniemy's gone. Matt Nagy's the OC. They step down to 15th. This is still prime Patrick Mahomes. Like I'm sorry,
Yep,
it's inexcusable. It is
it is.
inexcusable.
And
He is
everybody's like, "Wow, what
terrible.
happened to their offense? They don't really do anything until late
Matt
late in
Nagy
games in the
happened.
playoffs." Yeah, Matt Nagy happened to that
Matt Nagy
offense.
happened.